hppodcraft.com.
I had not quite crossed the street when I heard a muttering band advancing along Washington from the north. As they reached the broad open space where I had had my first disquieting glimpse of the moonlit water, I could see them plainly only a block away, and was horrified by the bestial abnormality of their faces and the dog-like subhumanness of their crouching gait. One man moved in a positively simian way, with long arms frequently touching the ground, while another figure, robed and tiara'd, seemed to progress in an almost hopping fashion. I judged this party to be the one I had seen in the Gilman's courtyard, the one, therefore, most closely on my trail. As some of the figures turned to look in my direction, I was transfixed with fright, yet managed to preserve the casual shambling gait I had assumed. To this day I do not know whether they saw me or not. If they did, my stratagem must have deceived them, for they passed on across the moonlit space without varying their course, meanwhile croaking and jabbering in some hateful guttural patois I could not identify.
That was a chapter from H.P. Lovecraft's The Shadow over Innsmouth, and you are listening to the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast at hppodcraft.com. I am one of your hosts, Chris Lackey, and with me is
Chad Pfeiffer, and we're joined by a guest once again for our final episode covering the show.
Matt Burriesci.
Thanks for coming back, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So this section where he's running away from him and he's basically pretending to be one of them, that becomes like a common horror trope, especially in zombie movies, where people pretend to be the monster so they can escape.
Yeah, exactly. You see it in Shaun of the Dead, and it's a great technique.
With some quick thinking on the part of Bobby O.
Yeah, man.
Exactly.
Good idea. It comes really natural to him for some reason as well.
Yeah, and when we left, he'd escaped the Gilman and he'd gotten into the adjacent building. At this point, the story does fall into the kind of zombie archetype to an extent, the struggle of a man against a society of conformists. If one of the people that are conforming in the band sees you, it will call the others, and they'll all fall on you, and it's implied that they'll make you one of them. Thematically, it's a pretty interesting thing. And I wonder, I mean, some of that must be at play, don't you think, with Lovecraft? You go into this town and they're going to make you like them. It's a fear. Anyway, before we get too far into discussing it, anything we need to get out of the way before we
Well, yes, we do. We are still doing our fundraiser for the Call of Cthulhu reading by Andrew Leman.
That's who we heard reading that opening paragraph. Once again, joining us. Thank you, Andrew.
We are trying to get all 3 parts of Call of Cthulhu read by him, and the music will be done by Reber Clark,
That's right.
Whose music we used for our show when we covered the Call of Cthulhu.
And he even he just sent me the other day some new music to use in the reading when we put it out.
Oh, great.
So it'll have some original stuff that you haven't heard before as well.
I love this stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool. Reminder that I've got my book up on Amazon, Children in Heat. If anybody wants to pick up, it's a quick read. Put a link in the show notes.
Everybody should read it.
That's all I think that we have, right?
That's it. That's all we're pushing.
Okay, because I'm excited. This is the greatest part of the greatest Lovecraft story. I'm loving talking about this stuff. So
our first episode, you asked me if this was, you said this was your favorite Lovecraft story, and I said, well, I'm not really sure if it is. Man, I think I might be sold. After we've been talking about it and getting into it, I think this actually might be my favorite Lovecraft story.
All the time, people will say, what's a good one to introduce Lovecraft to somebody? I'd say this story right here. If they have the time. I mean, there's shorter ones. You could give them From Beyond or something so they can get the flavor.
Yeah.
But, man, this is the good stuff.
Yeah, it's really good.
This was the story that got me into Lovecraft, because you gave me this book and I read this story, and this story got me into Lovecraft. This and the Temple.
There you go. Testimonials.
Testimonial.
Well, when we heard that opening paragraph, though, we were cutting ahead a little bit. There's a section we kind of skipped over that's pretty tense, where he makes you feel every little jog that the protagonist is going through, because essentially there's people all over the streets. There's sounds of an organized pursuit of some kind. And his southward exit that he was going to take is cut off.
Yeah.
So he's got to kind of improvise a way out of the town, and at one point he has to cross this wide open square. As he does, he spies Devil Reef out there in the water, which in and of itself bugs him just seeing the island, but even worse as he sees that in the water between the reef and the shore, there are some shapes swimming inward.
Yes.
There's something coming from the island.
Yeah.
So it's not just the dudes that were in the hotel. It's not just the people on the street. A teeming horde is coming from the ocean as well,
right.
Which is terrible.
But they're apparently not very good at tracking because our narrator is able to elude them to a large extent.
Yeah, he is. I wonder if it's underwater they smell really well, but once they get up here on land, their senses are a little screwed up. They're not going to be able to, like, hearing and sight and smell and all these things we would use to track. Doesn't work. That would line up with most Lovecraftian monsters. They're not in their originating realm, and so they're kind of helpless to an extent. Because these guys, it's not like they're running around chasing them. They're all shambling and dragging legs around and kind of, you know what I mean? I visually, I just imagine that everybody's kind of coming along and not walking real well. And it's that zombie kind of thing. They're in ill repair.
Well, they're just not suited for land activity. In the water, I'm sure they totally kick ass. But here,
some of them are hopping.
It's like you were saying, Chad. It's very similar to the Migo in Whisper in Darkness, where they're not from Earth, so they're kind of at a disadvantage.
But somehow they still project a horrible menace. It's terrifying for these things to be after you.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's sheer numbers as well. I mean, a whole town of 5-year-olds that want to kill me is scary. It doesn't matter how advantaged or disadvantaged they are when you've got numbers on their side.
Is that something that is either happened to you, Chris, or do you just spend time worrying about it?
No, I mean, have you ever had that? I'm sure I've asked you or Burriesci. I mean, in a fight, how many 5-year-olds do you think you could take?
You actually never asked me that question.
I've never asked you that? I could have sworn I've asked you that one, Matt. If there were children that were bent on killing you, not just actual 5-year-old children, but, maybe they're possessed with some kind of supernatural evil, how many could you take down? I mean, they're 5, they're little, and they're not very strong, but if you get 3 or 4 of them, they'll bring you down.
Yeah, I think I could do better than 3 or 4.
Really?
Yeah, I could take out 4 5-year-olds. Well, look, there's only one way to settle this debate. I'll see you guys later.
Wait.
I'm going down to the grade school.
You're talking about not real 5-year-olds, because real 5-year-olds would be scared of you and they would run away. I'm talking, 5-year-olds that would be hell bent for leather, ready to destroy you.
Right, Children of the Corn type children.
Exactly, like Children of the Corn children, where they're homicidal.
They wouldn't be scared of me.
No, they would. I mean, they would try and fight you, and a punch from you would definitely really severely injure a 5-year-old kid. No matter how crazy that 5-year-old kid is. However, you're not going to get too many good punches in because you'll just get swarmed.
Yeah.
Faster than you, actually.
Well, I was just about to say, I think I would just outrun them.
I don't know if you can outrun a little kid. I mean, honestly, like, you're gonna get winded much quicker than they are.
You especially.
What are you saying?
Bye. When's the last time you've been to the gym? Little kids, they're out exercising every day. They're crazy.
That's true, with their sinister little juice boxes and their furtive ways of...
You could, however, outsmart the children.
Well, I guess so, but I don't know if I could, because as we're having this discussion, I'm like starting to get more and more hopeless in this scenario.
But my point is, bringing it back to the story, even if they are disadvantaged, they still have numbers and they're organized.
And they have fear on their side. I mean, anybody who accosts me in the street, I don't know what their intentions are. That's the worst feeling. What do they want from him? Yeah. What are they going to do if they get him?
I don't know.
They're not looking to settle up that $1 hotel bill.
But that's what's cool about the story. If they were going to kill, maybe they're going to kill him. Maybe they're going to sacrifice him to some deep ones. Maybe they're going to try and make sweet love to him. Who knows? But it's obviously, you would think if they were going to kill him, they could have just done it earlier or easier. Nobody else is in the hotel. They could have just had a guy waiting in the hallway.
Yeah,
to jump him.
It's true.
Yeah, they have plans for this guy. There's something coordinated about him that they want to get. They want to get their hands on him for some reason.
This must be how the Beatles felt in Hard Day's Night. He's heading out to the rails, right? That's his new plan. That he kind of says, you know what? There is an old rail yard. I think nobody will patrol that, so it's covered. I think I can make it there, and that's going to be my exit out of town. He does get to the rails, and he has to kind of follow it. And he can hear the pursuit. It's sort of all around him. I think there's this long covered bridge he has to cross. I think, isn't it? He goes in and all these bats fly out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the same bridge that when he came into town in, right? That's yeah. It was really creepy. Those bridges are scary, the covered ones, just because you're trapped. Once you go in, there's only 2 ways out. Either keep going through that bridge or go back the way you came, and it's they're creepy.
Yeah, there's a covered bridge in the Dunwich Horror too. I think it really works well as a gateway into the supernatural realm, sort of.
Right,
The threshold that they have to cross.
Exactly.
Well, so as he makes his way, he sees something to the south. It looks like a moving column of things on the Ipswich Road, and there are way too many of them. Innsmouth is only supposed to have about 200 or 300 folks in it in the entire town.
Yeah.
Suddenly, there's all these folks out. So these are the people that have been hiding in those shelled-out houses. Yeah.
I mean, thousands.
There's a lot more of a population in Innsmouth than people know.
Right. He described an undulating column. That's how he describes it. It's just it's like a giant snake almost. Like it's just horrifying.
He has to basically hide once he sees this column and just wait for them to pass. And he knows that they're approaching, so he kind of gets down in the, what is it, there's just some shrubbery or something like that he kind of crouches down.
By the train tracks, he just kind of gets in and hunkers down and hides.
And there's a moonlit passage that he can see, and he knows that when they pass through it, he will see them, and he doesn't want to see them.
But of course, he can't help but look.
But I must try to tell what I thought I saw that night under the mocking yellow moon. Saw surging and hopping down the Rowley Road in plain sight in front of me as I crouched among the wild brambles of that desolate railway cut. Of course, my resolution to keep my eyes shut had failed. It was foredoomed to failure, for who could crouch blindly while a legion of croaking, baying entities of unknown source flopped noisomely past, scarcely more than 100 yards away? I saw them in a limitless stream, flopping, hopping, croaking, bleating, surging inhumanly through the spectral moonlight in a grotesque, malignant saraband of fantastic nightmare. And some of them had tall tiaras of that nameless whitish gold metal, and some were strangely robed, and one, who led the way, was clad in a ghoulishly humped black coat and striped trousers, and had a man's felt hat perched on the shapeless thing that answered for a head. I think their predominant color was a grayish-green, though they had white bellies. They were mostly shiny and slippery, but the ridges of their backs were scaly. Their forms vaguely suggested the anthropoid, while their heads were the heads of fish with prodigious bulging eyes that never closed. At the sides of their necks were palpitating gills, and their long paws were webbed. They hopped irregularly, sometimes on 2 legs and sometimes on 4. I was somehow glad that they had no more than 4 limbs. Their croaking, baying voices, clearly used for articulate speech, held all the dark shades of expression which their staring faces lacked. But for all of their monstrousness, they were not unfamiliar to me. I knew too well what they must be, for was not the memory of that evil tiara at Newburyport still fresh? They were the blasphemous fish frogs of the nameless design, living and horrible. And as I saw them, I knew also of what that humped tiaraed priest in the black church basement had so fearsomely reminded me. Their number was past guessing. It seemed to me that there were limitless swarms of them, and certainly my momentary glimpse could have shown only the least fraction. In another instant, everything was blotted out by a merciful fit of fainting, the first I had ever had.
I think the most horrible part of that is the guy in the hat for some reason.
Yeah. Well, I assume that's Old Man Marsh, right?
Old Man Marsh.
Yeah, I don't know why it's so terrifying to me that he's still wearing human clothes. Did that strike you as especially terrifying?
Yeah, well, because for me, it really stuck out because it really points out that they used to be human, or that they are human in a way. If it was just a fish man, I kind of don't think of it as being an intelligence or somebody that makes those kind. It seems way more human to me, and pathetic in a way, that it's pretending to be human or still holding on to some of these human trappings like clothes.
I think it goes to what Matt has been saying the whole time, that one of the things about this that's so chilling is that it's an imitation of humanity.
Right.
It's an imitation of normal life. And imitations are very unsettling. Anybody trying to pretend to be, it's kind of like when the Uncanny Valley, when you see a movie and there's a computer animated person in it, they're not a person.
Yeah.
When you see the Polar Express, it fills me with some kind of worry, or there's something hideous behind it, because it's not a good thing.
It feels like they're trying to trick you into thinking it's a real thing, and it's not. It's an evil thing that's pretending to be human.
And grasping to that human life, still holding on to some aspect of it. It's seeing the humanity in the monster as well that makes it, as you were saying, Chris, it's just bothersome.
It's so good. And that ends the fourth chapter.
With the typical Lovecraft faint.
Yes, fainting.
I know, when he says a merciful fit of fainting, the first I have ever had. Well, this character, but not Lovecraft.
No.
This must be, if there's a board somewhere, I think we finally hit the millionth faint. He wakes up in a gentle daylight rain. Pretty lucky that he passed out in a place where nobody can see him.
Yeah.
And he wakes up as if from a drunken fantasy. There it is again. Well, it's past noon when he wakes up, so he had a really good nap there.
Yeah.
He was out for a long time.
And the rain especially, it would probably wake me up a lot earlier, but maybe he's just, tired.
Well, his mind got blown.
Yeah, or he's just tired.
Suddenly not as interested in his architectural tour.
Yeah.
No. Pushed to the way.
No. He does make it to Rowley. He gets out of there. He takes a train to Arkham where he can kind of, he gets himself together and he starts telling the authorities what's up. And I love that. This isn't something that he keeps to himself.
No. And this is kind of the first time that in the Lovecraft stories that this is what happens. Usually they just can't deal with it, and then they go on with their life, or they die, or they go insane, or whatever. But this guy goes to the authorities, and they don't really believe him, sort of, at first, but he convinces them, they check it out, and then things, it reveals things.
Oh, yeah, and it works. I mean,
works.
This is not the horror trope of the unhelpful policeman, which is the policemen are always unhelpful in horror stories and horror movies. They just don't believe the protagonist or whatever. But here, he tells them in Arkham, he tells them in Boston, they go, okay, we're going to go check this out. They go, they say these people are crazy and there's some monsters down in the ocean, so get some torpedoes ready.
Yeah, they reach absolutely reasonable conclusions.
Yeah.
Yep, they say, well, that sounds like a crazy story, but let's go look. And then they look and they go, yep, that story's true. Let's take care of it. It's wonderful. It's wonderful that happened. But as you said, it kind of ruins his vacation, this whole experience. And so when he was in Arkham, he did have an opportunity to grab some genealogical notes. And although it seems the story's over, there's a little more to learn here. Mm-hmm. It seems that his uncle had been in Innsmouth before doing the same research. Mm-hmm. And had uncovered a similar thing, which is that his grandmother's father, Benjamin Orne, had married somebody odd just after the Civil War, a woman named Marsh who didn't have any recorded family and herself had an early death, which is kind of a strange thing, that there's a Marsh in his family.
Yep.
So that's the conclusion of his genealogical tour. He got some pretty bad genealogical info there. He goes home to Toledo. That's the first time I realized that he was a Midwesterner. It was at that point in the story. He's from Ohio.
Right.
A year later, he's recuperated from this whole adventure, and he has to go spend some time with his mother's family in Cleveland. He's never really liked hanging out with that family, right? Mm-hmm. His grandmother had disappeared when he was 8. She just kind of wandered off after the suicide of his uncle, the one who'd also done the same trip as him to New England. Basically, he'd made that trip and then shot himself. If you look at this story against Arthur German, it's got a similar conclusion, where the protagonist finds out something terrible about his bloodlines. In Arthur German, he sets himself on fire.
Right. We kind of had that with his uncle as well. His uncle finds out his origins and kills himself. But our protagonist doesn't go that way.
Right, which I think is a pretty interesting... It's neat that he says, well, here's one way we could go, but this time we're going to go a different way with it.
What if he embraces it or starts to understand it?
This is I think one of the great endings in horror literature because that happens, because he starts to have these dreams where he starts to see the cities, and then he's swimming. Yeah, he's swimming. He starts to physically change.
Yeah, and then he has a dream that he meets his grandmother. Now, his grandmother had wandered off when he was 8. Nobody knows what happened to her. I thought that was curious because I think Lovecraft was 8 when his father died.
Yeah.
In one of those dreams he has of swimming in the water, he meets his grandmother in the sea. She's like in some palace with an underwater garden, and it made me think of those sea monkey ads. Where there's the nuclear family floating around and they're kind of 1950s bliss.
One of the things that makes it so disturbing to me is that as he's telling the story, he's relating it in such a matter-of-fact way, all this creepy stuff at the bottom of the sea. He's just like, oh yeah, then Fa lived in Yaf 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 or whatever. I can't even pronounce these names.
Oh, I know.
It tells you all about how the deep ones could not be destroyed and all this stuff. And then it all seems rather like logical. Like, of course, this is the course he would take.
Yeah. There's a little bit of horror because while he's doing research on his mother's family and when he'd gone out to Cleveland to visit them, his brother takes him to the safe deposit box where the family jewelry is kept, or is this another uncle? It's another uncle or something. He's going to go check out the family jewelry, and when he looks at it, it's a tiara and some other things that are just like that tiara in Newburyport. And when he sees that, he faints again, I think. But that is that's the horror. That's as far as he goes with the horror. And then after that, he kind of realizes, hey, I'm descended from these people. He's in a bit of denial, but you're right, man. He gets very matter of fact. He gets an insurance job and continues to try, living a human life, but he knows he's having those dreams. And it finally concludes,
So far I have not shot myself as my Uncle Douglas did. I bought an automatic and almost took the step, but certain dreams deterred me. The tense extremes of horror are lessening, and I feel queerly drawn toward the unknown sea deeps instead of fearing them. I hear and do strange things in sleep, and awake with a kind of exaltation instead of terror. I do not believe I need to wait for the full change as most have waited. If I did, my father would probably shut me up in a sanitarium as my poor little cousin is shut up. Stupendous and unheard-of splendors await me below, and I shall seek them soon. Ia, relay. Cthulhu Fatagan. Ia. No, I shall not shoot myself. I cannot be made to shoot myself. I shall plan my cousin's escape from that Canton madhouse, and together we shall go to marvel-shadowed Innsmouth. We shall swim out to that brooding reef in the sea and dive down through black abysses to Cyclopean and many-columned Johanneth Lay. And in that lair of the deep ones, we shall dwell amidst wonder and glory forever.
It's a happy ending.
in my mind, that is a happy ending.
Under the sea.
It's happy for him. Probably not so happy for humanity.
No. The implications are pretty bad.
Yeah, well, that's the end of the story. But the way that we just heard Andrew read it, I mean, I do think it's an emotional, it's a wondrous... You have to have some kind of mixed emotions about this because, in a sense, he goes to heaven.
It really feels like, I mean, because he sees his dead grandmother there,
mm-hmm.
And he's welcomed in, and he feels, that he belongs, and he's going to live there in this beautiful place forever. And it's totally, like a heaven myth.
Yeah. Dwell amidst wonder and glory and see all your loved ones and never die and never have illness. It sounds good to me.
And destroy humanity.
Right.
And I thought one of the things that's really cool here, too, is that it makes you think that his whole visit to Innsmouth was sort of like an amphibious biological impulse to, like, return to where you were spawned, kind of. It's just so creepy.
Yeah. Oh, good call. Because he does, no matter what, he probably would have found himself there somehow.
He got the call.
I also like his plan to bust out his cousin from the madhouse.
Yeah, which also kind of shows sympathy for this character, that he realizes that somebody else is being unjustly imprisoned and he's going to go free him. So there's this whole other prison break story.
I want to hear that story. How does he break him out,
Yeah, he goes in there like with some cheap disguise, glub, glub, glub.
Anytime there's a monster with a disguise, I love it. Guy with gills and a mustache. Some people say that within this story there are themes of racism and worries about polluting your bloodline and that kind of thing, and that Lovecraft had kind of slipped back into his earlier position. He's concerned about polluting his Anglo-Saxon bloodline, etc. Do you think that's true, or does this show some kind of... Because the protagonist accepts who he is at the end. He accepts what he is. He embraces it.
Well, it could be even more racist in saying that... What it is you've got to be careful, people. If you find out you're one, you're going to accept it, and that's bad. And because these guys are definitely evil. They're doing evil things, and so beware of people that think that it's okay because they might be part of this conspiracy.
Okay, but hold on. Are they doing evil things?
The deep ones are doing terrible things. They've killed all these people on the island. They've killed the people of Innsmouth. They've raped all these human beings. They're gonna destroy humanity eventually. Isn't that terrible?
They're taking human sacrifices.
When are you going to get to the bad part? I don't know, man. Yeah, I guess they do take human sacrifices, but who knows what they're doing? Maybe sending those people off on vacations.
Probably not. What's your take? Think that he might not be as racist? You think that this is sort of a maturing of it, or?
Yeah, it's impossible for me to know, but it does seem that, look, the guy doesn't set himself on fire because he finds this out. He embraces it, and that notion in and of itself shows a kind of evolution of thought that I didn't find present.
I think it's a much more interesting story. And, of course, you can never really be inside somebody's head, especially somebody that has been dead for 80 years. To me, it doesn't say that he has advanced his views on racism and things like that. It's just, I feel like he's a better writer.
I got you. I mean, certainly he's disgusted by these people.
All of his descriptions of the deep ones and the hybrids are not complimentary in any way.
Right, but when we talk about the themes of the subtext of the racism and stuff, this is a little bit different in the sense that, I mean, this is an alien species. I mean, this is not a, I know that there's a subtext there, but this is a horrible alien species that we're talking about interbreeding with people. I mean, it's just a different thing.
Yeah, and well, it's true. There's all different kinds of ways to look at it. There's something that the Deep Ones do here where sort of an interesting, almost imperial kind of technique they have where they meet the natives and they give them some trinkets and some gold and kind of get them on their side, and then slowly they take over things, and then now the Deep Ones live there. You know what I mean? Like, they're a conquering race, but they don't do it by just coming up and, well, they do it that once, but I mean, in general, they kind of use coercion, even intimidation to an extent, instead of just brute force, which they eschew.
And also, what the hell's going on with the Shoggoths? Why do they have them? I mean, the Elder Things use the Shoggoths as sort of a slave race to do their bidding and build their buildings. And are the Deep Ones using Shoggoths as well? Are they just using them to build things? Are they trying to make some kind of new life form that will destroy humanity, or?
But you guys keep saying destroy humanity, and is that their plan?
I don't know.
We don't know what their plan is because they keep making reference to the fact that they could wipe people out anytime they want to, but they don't. So I feel like there's something else they're trying to do, and I don't know what that is.
And that's great. I love that and from a storytelling, I don't want to know because I'm sure it would be lame whatever the explanation is. Lovecraft does this really good job of painting all around something and giving you this negative shape, and this negative shape hints at something that's horrible. You don't know what's in there, but you can kind of see that outline of it, and it's terrifying. It's so good, and that's
the best way to do it.
Yeah, and it just feels like something that Lovecraft, that's what he excels at, is doing that type of thing, and it's really displayed in the story.
Yeah, I feel like this. What's the next story you guys are covering after this?
As I had mentioned last week, we're going to do a little wrap up on Innsmouth. We're going to have a couple of guests. Robert M. Price is going to come on and speak to us for a bit, and we're also going to talk to our pal Donovan, who runs hplovecraft.com website that we use as a resource constantly on the show, and who also is somewhat of an expert in Lovecraftian geography and architecture. So it'll be interesting to talk to him. So we're going to cover some of that stuff next week. Then after that, we're getting on to our next story, which I believe is another collaboration, isn't it?
It's a collaboration with Harry S. Whitehead, and it's called The Trap, which I have never read, so I'm looking forward to jumping into this story.
Yeah, I don't know much about it, but I'll tell you that after we do that one-off, we're getting into the Dreams in the Witch House. So that's the next big one.
So after The Trap, then we got followed up with the Dreams in the Witch House.
I believe we're going to have Ken Hite with us for that one, yeah?
Yes, Ken Hite will be with us in that.
But that's getting off track. Why did you ask that, Matt?
Just because I felt like this story is sort of, it feels like the zenith. It feels like the absolute culmination, because he's got the dreams in there, he's got the Lost City, he's got Cthulhu in there, he's got the Shoggoths in there. Everything is coming together in this story. It feels like it to me.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
The thematic things that he's covered before are here. Yeah, you're right. Everything from his mythology is there. It's a horror story. It's got a science fiction element to it. It's great. And it really is. I think it's the apex of his work. We're going to talk more about the origins of the story probably when we talk to Robert next week. But I know that this was notably inspired by a Robert Chambers story.
Yeah.
He of the King in Yellow fame. He wrote a story called The Harbor Master, which is about amphibious human beings living in a deep chasm in the sea. I know that was particularly influential on this. Also an Irvin Cobb story called Fishhead.
Yeah.
Which is not the song Roly Poly Fishheads, but it was a story called Fishhead that Lovecraft really liked. And we can talk about some more of that next week. But there are some literary sources that this came from. He wasn't the first to come up with this whole human-fish hybrid thing.
But we'll talk. I think that's something we'll probably definitely talk about with Robert. Absolutely love this story, and I had so much fun going over it and really digging deep into it. It's one of the joys of doing the show is that I learned so much more about the material, and I think that I liked something before, and then by the end of our discussion, I just love it.
Indeed. Well, it's been really fun talking with you guys about this. It's remains, even under the light of analysis, still my favorite Lovecraft piece.
Yeah.
I hope that if folks haven't read it, they will.
Yeah, read it.
And certainly pass it on to others. And I think that's all we're going to have on the actual coverage of the story until we're back next week discussing it with those guys. So
we're going to outro once again with a piece of music. This is from the upcoming album Live at the Gilman House, featuring Ogham Waits and the Amphibian Jazz Band. It's a collection of jazz standards with an Innsmouth bent that will be released soon by the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society. There are more details on their site, CthulhuLives.org, and the track we'll be playing is called Some Wonderland Overseas. Hope you all enjoy that and pick up the record. Matt.
Thanks so much for being here with us and talking it over. I think you've had a lot of great insights, and also you're just a funny dude.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Also want to thank Brooke Burgess, our intern, for some great notes and helping us with the site and getting things organized. And she's amazing, as well as Mike Mann, web guru, all-around kick-ass guy.
Yeah, and Andrew Leman for doing our readings. And that's all we got. So thanks a lot, everybody. I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
And I'm Chris Lackey.
And I'm Matt Burriesci.
And this has been the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
hppodcraft.com.
hppodcraft.com. There's a story old saying God is kind. Foolish mortals hold, so their faith is blind. In a useless, crucified, consumptive veil enshrined. Obed Marsh, he thought he could beat those odds, so he sailed his yacht, seeking better gods. Found an island where they worshipped cephalopods. Mars sailed home with exotic gold beyond belief. Fish now teem in abundance round Devil Reef. Here in Innsmouth, now we all bend the knee, hoping that we one day will see some wonderland overseas. Yeah. Join the esoteric order and swear we won't despair. Soon we will share some wonderland overseas. Although we know we're not a clan, people think of as handsome as deep ones that we must appease. Dagon calls to us and we must obey, so we can play in Yarmouth Lane, some wonderland overseas. Some wonderland overseas. Although we know we're not a clan, people think of as handsome as deep ones that we must appease. calls to us, and we shall obey. Come frolic and play in yon if lay some wonderland overseas. Some wonderland overseas.